want to show you, yeah, quickly how to use ZAppLink. Again, you can send it to any paint app that you prefer. In this case, I'm using Photoshop. I've also grabbed a really great high-res image of a hippo that I'm using as kind of my reference base. So I'm going to copy my image. I'm going to go back to ZBrush here. By the way, I've got this kind of document thing set up for the character sheet. You can literally just go to clear all views. Okay, clear. I'll go back to document ZAppLink. And again, this is your first kind of opening when you hit ZAppLink. So again, you can hit set target app and just simply find the location of the image editor that you want to use. In this case, I've already got it set. You can tell this to be double-sided, and there's a fade, meaning that any of the faces that turn away from the sort of parallel view of the polygons facing the camera they will not be paintable, essentially. You can turn on perspective or not if you like. You can have double-sided or not. What you're doing is literally dropping it into kind of this 2D mode. It sends it over to Photoshop as this flat 2D image, okay? So you've kind of got the sort of shading, the flat color underneath, and the shading is to kind of help guide you. So I usually will paste this in below or in between these two layers. Okay? And then I'll literally just kind of scale it, and you can warp it and then whatnot to your liking. Something else I often do too is I'll hold Alt and click and drag the layer mask so that I'm just seeing where I'm positioning the paint or the color information, okay, from this other layer. And if you want as well, I'll do this where I basically go in with I usually click on the layer mask again because it's sort of like erasing without permanently erasing the pixels. If you hit B for brush, right, and let me just make sure I'm on that layer. Sorry, click on the layer mask. If you're painting in white, it expands the mask and the visibility. If you're painting in black, you see it can let more in. So I might literally just kind of paint out what's not working, essentially, like some of the areas of the belly and stuff, okay? So I'm kind of bringing back this base color, right, that I already had. And again, really interesting thing about this too is that I usually play with blending modes a lot. So a lot of times I like to just cycle through them. Sometimes just leaving it in normal is great because you're just doing a flat, simple base to start. In my case, I use luminosity because I laid down very, very basic colors. If you take a look at before and after, right, you see the difference that makes in the texture, yeah? Okay, so what's interesting about this is I usually will right-click the layer above that first layer, the base layer that came from ZBrush. I'll basically go to merge down, and you want to hit preserve. Control S. Now, if you pop back to ZBrush, it'll say, hey, do you want to re-enter ZBrush? I'll say re-enter ZBrush, and voila, I'm picking up the texture. It's on the mesh now. Okay? Pretty awesome, right? So it's a super fast way to get some base color and to have it arrive in fairly high detail, right? So I'm really becoming a fan of this workflow just for quick photo editing, quick base color, and what's also really interesting I want to show you is that if you go into masking, sort of a 1-2 punch of this thing, if I go to mask by color, and I'll say maybe mask by intensity, you can go into your color settings and turn off colorize. So we just see a flat color. You see that there is this masking left behind. Sometimes I'll sharpen it or blur it. So if you hit Control Alt on this, that's sharpening. And Control click will blur, okay, or soften it. What's very interesting about this is that let's say I flip this around, or maybe I use it in this direction. If you go into, let's say, deformation, and then inflate, so this depends on what you want to see. So the inflate is pushing those shapes out a bit. Okay, I went way too far in inflate. Usually I'll just go to like inflate of like 1, 2, 3, something fairly low because it's subtle details. I don't need a massive ballooning of the detail. What's happening is that is now literally, I'll clear the mask so you can see it. That detail from the texture is now actually applied to the mesh. So it's kind of awesome. You can actually get a lot of hyper detailing via texture directly in the mesh. And now that can be baked out as a normal map, right? As ambient occlusion maps. And it can also add a fair amount of depth. And I want to show you one last trick to this too, is that if you go back to deformation, there's a relatively new feature. I think it's only a couple of versions old, but there's something called contrast. I'll crank it up really, really high. high. So you can see what's happening. The contrast will literally exaggerate all those details. So you get, again, it's a little bit overblown in some areas here. So I'll just usually take up the contrast to sometimes up to 10 or 20 at a max. But again, it helps kind of add a bit of depth and punchiness to the surface. Okay? So again, really great way to get texture, color, paint. Even if it's a starting point and you want to bring into substance, it's a good base, right? Good, quick, fast base. And if you want a painterly look and you're great at painting in some 2D app on Windows or a Mac, you can directly send mesh back and forth. Okay.